and start things up, and I will introduce you to Matthew Zupnick. Matthew, I've been friends with Matthew for about a dozen years now. He teaches sculpture at the University of Central Missouri up in Warrensburg, Missouri, about an hour east of Kansas City. He's been there for 27 years, I believe.
Yep.
And I like to tell people that Matthew, typically, the students take off in May, and he gets the studio to himself. So he gets to create and get all of those sketches and small wax renderings that he's been working on all year out into metal during the summer. So he typically creates and finishes one major piece, some sort of large sculpture, or a whole series of tools like you see here over the summer. I'm really excited to be able to bring Matthew's work to Conway and to the Wingate Museum. It is really, really exciting to see this work together. Matthew was telling me that he hasn't had someone curate the work before where they really pull together on a theme. But when I saw, this is his second set of tools of the trade. And when I saw his first set, I said, I really want to do a show with tools, with your work. And then he goes off and he sells that set to a collector in Florida. So now
Washington.
Is he Washington?
Washington State.
So he sold the work, but then he created this whole new series over a summer. And luckily we got to riff off of it for the rest of the tools and other tool-related artwork. But really the tools of the trade he's going to talk to you about. They are the steel, they are the bronze, they are the wood, they are the bolts that let things operate and function and move, which is also really neat, the interactive side of Matthew's work. So Matthew, thank you so much for coming down, and we'd love to hear just a little bit about your process.
All righty. One of the things I was hoping to do tonight, though, is not just ramble on. I'm hoping you'll have questions about the work, and feel free at any point to talk or ask the questions, and I'll try to answer them truthfully, at least some of the time. The other thing Christian had mentioned about the time frame to build things, some things will take a good part of a year to build. I think this tools of the trade probably took about a year and a half to 2 years to build. And I'm always working. I actually not that great of a professor because I'm also working in the studio with my students, but I actually believe in leading and teaching by them seeing me work, and I'm hoping they'll pick up on the work ethic and learn from me as I'm building things. So, and what that also does is it helps me keep a really good shop. I know everything's working, and I get to interact with the students when I'm doing it. So I kind of don't stop. But in the summer, when it is quiet, I do tend to pull the pieces together if I can, but I'm always working on them. So, also, I'm originally from New York State, from the Binghamton area, which is kind of near Ithaca or Syracuse. And I grew up in a relatively small town, about 4 hours from Pennsylvania. But how did I get all this art stuff in my mind? My mother was an English professor, and her area was short stories. And my father was a professor in art history, but also taught art for many years in places like City College and so forth. And so when you grow up in that environment, I just never wanted to do anything else. And maybe I couldn't do anything else, I'm not sure. And the materials I work with, and this is where the smarts come in, are all difficult to work with. Not very clever necessarily to work with, but I love these materials. And nothing comes easy. It's all physical, and it takes many hours to make anything work. And when you're building work, you think it's going okay, and then you have to redesign. And that's part of the fun. I love that challenge. And usually, if you look around the room, there's not too much there's repetition with the figures and what I'm saying in my narratives, but I think the way I build things and what I tend to build is all over the place. So that's kind of a little bit about my background and so forth. So where would you like me to start talking about something?
Well, would you talk a little bit about the tools on the wall?
Okay.
And, I interpreted
Yeah, sure. What'll happen when you're making work or when I'm making work, you hit a stall point. You're not sure what to do next. So I had an old hammer and a little bronze head that I cast separately. I had no idea that they would go together. And I put together a hammer with the head, and I actually made a similar stand and put it on the wall. And that was the only piece I planned to make with tools of the trade. There was no tools of the trade. But I made the piece, I put it up, I think it sat around for about a year. And then I thought of the title, Tools of the Trade, and then all of a sudden I couldn't stop. So there's 17 of these here, but there were 12 before. And what happened is I was kind of mad at the guy. I never sell stuff, very rarely, but he called me up through Instagram. He contacted me, and he was a little pissed because he asked 3 times about the pieces. I didn't respond because I didn't know there was messages coming, and I'm not necessarily fluent with that app. But anyway, I called him and I talked to him over the phone, and he really wanted to purchase. So I ended up selling all 12 of them, and that was a really nice thing to do. But I knew I wanted to build. After I was done, I said, darn, they're gone. I didn't even have a chance to live with them. You know, that's part of the fun. And so with that hammer piece I did, I started thinking tools of the trade, and it had nothing to do with tools necessarily. It had to do with how we communicate, how we behave with each other, how society works together, how we deal with problems between countries, or just discussions on stage like political debates, which just happened. All that stuff to me are tools of the trade. So it had to do with more about human interaction for me. So I just kept doing them, and I would go. Part of the fun is I go to flea markets and antique shops and junk shops, and I started buying them, and I'd come back with bags of these things. And I didn't know what I was going to do with some of them. Some of them I knew before I bought them. So it's there's a gut reaction to when I work. So, when I make things. So I don't know, which would you like me to talk about?
I think the 2 screwdriver type pieces right behind you.
Okay. Well, this is a reluctant truce driver. One of the fun things I really do enjoy are titling. I never liked Untitled 1, Untitled 2. They never did much for me. So since I'm doing a narrative, I kind of want to give the audience something to kind of grab onto, and at the same time, I don't want to tell them everything. I like mystery in the work, and one of my early influences came from my father, and his main focus was Bosch and Bruegel. And so both of those gentlemen or painters or printmakers, whatever they were doing, would work in a way, and they had a story, but it was inventive, and it was all theirs. You cannot not know their work. And even though it's 500-600 years old, to me, they are as current as they are the day they were made. Of course, we dress differently. The buildings look a little different, but I still love that work. It just has a long-lasting quality. So this one had to do with reluctance to agree with somebody who thinks differently than you. So this is kind of the 2 working their way through something, and the screwdrivers like forcing them to finally say, okay, we'll agree on something. And so that's what that piece meant for me. This is deflection driver. For me, that one was about, how you do something stupid and you just don't want to take credit for it. We all do it. It could be a car accident or something you said to a friend or whatever it may be. You stumbled and you made a mistake, but you're going to blame everybody else but yourself. We all do it. Everybody does it. So this is the thought process of going through and figuring out, oh, it's my fault. So that was kind of the idea. And I don't always know what all my work means, and that's okay too, because I think that means it's even more open to interpretation. And one of the things my father used to say, who always had an answer for everything, for me, and I believe always was correct, usually, he would say, never underestimate your audience. So I never try to talk down to anyone. I respect your ability to figure it out. And at the same time, I don't have to tell you what to think. You can come up with your own conclusions. That's why I rarely tell people what my work means, and I rarely do a written statement if I'm exhibiting it on specific pieces, because I trust you guys to, and if the work doesn't draw you in, I guess I kind of failed with that, but hopefully I'm always trying to get people in. And one of the ways I think I try to do it is craftsmanship and shiny objects. Yeah, we all love that. I mean, a ring, beautiful jewelry, and I'm like, your campus to me is a shiny object. It is just, I was telling you just a few minutes ago, it pulls me in. It's a beautiful place. It's done with love. The benches were the thing I was talking to you about, those beautiful benches. They could have just done a bench, but they put 3 of them together. I said, oh, that's brilliant. And that kind of draws you in. So there's many ways to do that. Any other people?
Can you talk a little bit about the construction process? I mean, I'm really
Sure.
fascinated by the
Yeah, he was talking about the waxing. So it's, for example, the bronze figure here is made in wax first. So it's the lost wax process. It's microcrystalline wax. It's really fun to work. I can use fingers and a pencil and a toothpick and make that. I mean, and I usually just take a little lamp and heat it up. And by the way, every piece cast in here actually does not get cast during the summer. It gets cast when my students cast. So I participate in the pour. Every term we do 1 pour, and we've done it every year, every term, except during when COVID first hit. And when we came back, we actually did the 2 castings for that. So I cast with the students, which is, it's like when I break those molds open, it's Christmas morning. It's really fun, but then the work begins. So you have a gating system, so there's a pour cup, there's runners and sprues and vents that have to be cut off. You have to clean everything up. There are flaws in the castings, so we have something called a TIG welder, which allows us to take silicone bronze rod and fix up or repair anything that needs to be done. It is kind of a laborious process, but I don't care. And as I think I said to somebody here tonight, I said, you have nothing better to do anyway. Yeah, and that's kind of my life. And one of the things I like to tell people, I've been married for many years, and I have a wonderful child, but I said the trick for me as an artist was to marry someone that loves me, but really not that much. So, and what I mean by that is she's a very independent person, doesn't need me hanging around her, and she gets sick of me once in a while and says, go to the shop. And that is wonderful to have that kind of relationship. So you have to find someone that, and I don't know how much she really cares about this stuff, but she knows I love doing it, and she supports me to doing it. So, does that help? Yeah. Okay, and then the other thing, the rod stock. So there are not many artists usually that will, I was telling Christian earlier today, that will weld metalworking with a bronze. So you don't see a lot of this sort of thing or this sort of where it's connected to metal. So I like doing that because the quality of the metal construction is so different than the organic feel of the bronze. So, or the...
Is that bronze or steel rod?
The rod is just steel rod. Yeah, that's 1/4-inch steel rod. It comes in 20-foot lengths.
And you use all 20 feet?
Yeah, okay, to bend it, I heat it up with oxyacetylene, so it turns cherry red, and you can literally bend the metal with your pinky. Yeah, don't touch the hot part, though. You can hurt yourself. But anyway, so that's kind of the idea of how you work that. So, well, how about another piece? Does anyone want me? We're going to start with these. Anything? Here, I'll tell you this. This is a fun one. So this is called the Holy One. And these all pretty much function, too. I mean,
yeah, it's so great.
Yeah, so I mean, this functions, everything works. That's just, this is called a combination square. That's the name of the tool, and I love it with this. So it's about adjusting things mentally, moving things along and so forth. The Holy One, I'm actually working on a new one. I cast the piece 13 years ago. It's a face that looks just like this one, but it's pretty much life size, and the piece is about 8 feet tall. And I've been working on it part of this summer, and it's coming along really nice. I cast the face, and I knew the title, but I didn't know what it was supposed to look like. And I have done probably over 100 sketches, and something called The Holy One better look good. I mean, really, it's got to feel right. And out of respect, I really do mean that, because people care about their holy ones, and there's a lot of different versions. And so I finally figured it out during an art department meeting, because I was ignoring that, and I was drawing along, and I came up with the idea. So I'm working on that now. I'm kind of excited about it. And it's going to have a light in it. It's going to glow. So it's going to be fun. But this is my Holy One driver. So it's built off of an old screwdriver, and it's about just loving the idea of your Holy One. It's really, and you're driven because it's a driver. So
I've been telling people they can take out their angst or frustrations on this guy.
yeah.
What is that guy all about?
Good question. Well, one of the things I like with my exhibitions, I kind of feel like they're like carnivals. And they are influenced, I think, partly by like Bruegel's children's games. And my father, that was his research. So that's why we would go to France and go to London and look at these incredible paintings that you see in all the books, but he wanted to see them in person. And there was one called Children's Games, and I think there were he figured it out, I think there were, and I'm getting the figure wrong, but it was over 120 games represented in that painting. And it was about, it's kind of like this sort of thing, the things that people do to entertain themselves, but also I think it had to do with human behavior. So that made me think about my work, and it's kind of like a carnival and when I would tour it, you curated it, and you had mentioned earlier, this first time in forever since the show's been curated, and it's the first time I've been curated. And I really appreciate the sensitivity that Christian showed to try to get something that had some tool quality to it, which was kind of fun to do once we got going on it. And as far as this piece, spring-loaded head, I think it has something, and I'm going to kind of wing this. I mean, what do you think it means? How's that?
Well, you really like that to say yes man.
You what?
When you move back and forth, it looks like a yes man.
Oh, yes, man. But what happens if you go this way?
Not that far.
I think it has to do with kind of maybe looking for answers, because the upright look, instability. You know, I'm not quite sure, but I do like it. I made a small one years ago that a gallery director in Pennsylvania, where I had a show, she owns that. I gave her that one. So this was a bigger version. And what's nice about it, it's black walnut. It's locally grown in our area. They're beautiful, kind of distressed-looking trees, which kind of go along with the piece, I think. So.
Feels like confusion.
Huh?
Feels like confusion.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly can't give you a specific answer. So that's one of these pieces that's very open, and you're all right. So it depends on how you look at it. So.
Did you sculpt the head?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so you did the wood work as well as
Oh yeah. Yeah. So unlike the casting where you're working wax, these are carved. I use a combination of. They have 4-inch grinding wheels which have a burr on it. They were relatively new at the time I started using them. They used to make them with chainsaw blades, which were very dangerous, and you get kickbacks, and people would always get hurt with them. So they came up with a tungsten burr that spins at a high rate, and you can kind of shape it out. And then I went in with carving tools, and so yeah, and I mean, it's fun. So, yeah, I kind of work. I move around whatever I feel like the piece needs. So, another one you want me to talk about? Oh, the teeter-totter.
Speaking of fun.
you guys need to demonstrate that.
Let me tell you how this idea started. It's very simple, but very weird. I had about an 8-foot piece of wood, and I think this is ash. I'm not even positive of the wood, but this is again locally grown, and this wood is used for baseball bats. So it's very hard and very durable. And so if you know anything about carving, if the piece is hard to hold in place, it's going to move around on you when you're working it. So I had a sawhorse, and I had the log on it, and I carved a face on one, and I figured, well, since I already have one done, I might as well do another face I had. So I went ahead and carved another one. And then I came in the morning. It was on the weekend. I remember sitting in dust everywhere, and it was during the summer. So this is the time where I'm not messing with anything but this. And it was on the sawhorse, and I said, God, that looks comfortable. And it reminded me of a teeter-totter. So I actually, kind of weird, but I sat on the face, and I said, it's a teeter-totter. And so then I started designing it. So this is a plow wheel, off a plow wheel, which again is kind of a Midwest thing that works the dirt. You know, there's about 100 of them or whatever, or 20 or 30 of them in a row. And I had been given this from someone who lived out on a farm, and I've had it probably a couple years by then. And then I started thinking, okay, heaven, hell, and then it has kind of a military reference because it's like a bullet, and then you have choices up and down, and then the idea that you're sitting and having fun, but it's affecting this apparatus in the center. And so it just kind of snowballed, and it's kind of fun. So who'd like to ride it? And believe it or not, if you sit on the nose, it might not be too comfortable, but the forehead is... Okay, ready? So it affects the center part. And it's really fun. And it's good for your legs. So that's the idea of the piece.
Bobs back and forth. That's great.
So get the idea. You got it? Yeah. Okay. So anyway, and it was fun to design, and I was talking to Christian earlier today, I think it was, and I had mentioned that I had got the heaviest students I could find. I mean, they were probably close to 250 to 300 pounds, and I had them ride it, and this whole thing was flexing, and I said, oh no, there's a problem in the design. So I ended up adding these bars, so you have to adjust things as you go. So, and this took a long time to build. And again, for shipping, it totally comes apart. The heads can come off. It splits here, 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 and so forth. And that's something you don't always think about when you see sculptures. How do you ship it? How do you move it? How does it get through doors? And all my work does usually come apart. So it's kind of designed into how I build it. So.
Do you do your own crates?
Do I what?
Do you make your own crates for your shipping?
We use blankets and cardboard boxes. Yeah, I have built crates many times. The crates can take longer than the sculptures sometimes, and if it's going to a specific show where I have to ship it, you build a crate. So I try to avoid that as much as I can. But yeah, I have some crates that I built. You have to custom build them for the piece. And now shipping is extraordinarily high, so that's changed.
Well, I love what has previously happened with Matthew for exhibits. He's planned. He has since given his Prius to his son, but he would plan these Prius shows where the work would fit in the Prius in order to deliver.
I can, yeah. Years ago, I mean, I've been doing it a long time. So years ago, I had a little Volkswagen Rabbit, and I drove down. I had a show in Scranton, Pennsylvania, at the museum there, and the director came out, and they were really irate with me. They said, "You're supposed to have a show today." I said, "It's in the car." So, and then it was okay. So they were surprised, and at that time I was working a little smaller, so it fit in a car like that. So.
I'm really taken with the way you mount the pieces, like the workmanship and the decision for the base.
Right. So it becomes part of the piece.
Exactly, and particularly with the screw ball. Does that move as well?
The screw ball? No, is solid. I usually tend to, okay, I've been to a lot of great shows, but they're pedestal shows. You know what I mean? They're very distracting. And so I try to usually, if the piece warrants it, I will design from the ground up. So this piece, this piece means a little bit extra to me in a way, because the gentleman who helped me do it, as far as, this is actually designed off of a machine gun, and he was in Vietnam. And he was a hero, one of the heroes, you know, that you hear about. And he was our graphic designer, John Lynch. Did you ever meet him? Yeah. And John had a great sense of humor. He was kind of coarse, but we kind of felt like brothers together. And I told him I wanted to build this, and he was receptive to, because I kind of drew the drawing what I wanted to do. And if you saw, I don't remember the name of the gun, but it was a machine gun that's built like this, have handles like this. And these, by the way, are just old hammer handles that I reshaped. And we talked about service, and I've never served. So my father did in World War II, but I never did. But at the same time, I have a great respect for it, but at the same time, they are manipulated, good or bad. And so the idea is that's the soldier down there, and I'm manipulating, so I guess I'd be the general in the safe spot, or president or whatever. And their little faces here, he's watching what's going on. This guy's upside down here, so decisions are always great. And this represented the old kind of Texas oil. Yeah. And there have been many wars over oil, and I think this was during probably the Kuwaiti War, which was oil related. But the thing that I worked with him on a bit too is in here there are words that I wrote up, a huge list of words, and I am someone who can't spell or write very well, but I tend to be pulled towards things that are difficult. So I've been doing pieces with words and so forth. Christian knows of some of them that I've done. And so the words in there have to do with service, and it's all with respect. And again, this part could have just been a bolt, but again, it's like a bullet. So it has those military connections. So. But anyway, John loved the piece, and it made me feel good that he kind of participated, because we tend to look, usually artists kind of work in their own shop and you know, don't have a lot of communication always to get some feedback, but it was fun doing pieces like this once in a while. So, is there another piece you'd want to talk about? Anybody? Yeah, don't stand way away. Come. I get lonely. That's the whole game. I was telling Christian about this piece when I was hired on. This was done pretty early when I was hired. And I went in, I was teaching drawing at the time too. So, and I'm teaching it right now, which has been fun. But in the drawing studio, there was this log. It wasn't a particularly good-looking log, so I kind of accidentally took it. It was a still life object. But why I took it is it was kind of a gnarly log with a lot of wormholes, and it was dried out. That was important, so it wouldn't check. And checking is when the wood shrinks, when the moisture runs out, and it will crack. And I like cracks like in that. It always works into my work. But these were fun, and I just carved them, and I kind of knew what I was going to build before I built this one. So, and it's adjustable heads. And kind of the idea about this is also, it's actually very similar to a theme through a lot of the work, which is kind of manipulating groups of people. I like these guys over here. This one's not going to be here, you know, that sort of thing. And the idea of that you can actually change and affect the work was fun, just like, or activate the work. So like pushing the head over there or moving the heads back and forth, that's kind of fun that you have that power. And the tools do it too. So here's another drill version. This is dizzy drill. So the idea, if you do spin it, it makes me feel nauseous, frankly, but it does make me, you know, uncomfortable. And that's sometimes, how you get dizzy, too many distractions or whatever, and it's harder to focus. So, what do you guys think of this one? This is one of, that's my sister's. I have two sisters, and it's both their favorites. So that's called Peace Driver, and the idea, and it's making a peace sign. So again, it's a driver, and it's love, and it's very different than a lot of my work because it is actually pleasant, and I'm not making some deep, awful thing. And that piece kind of reminds me of something I feel like I need to share is a lot of artists are somewhat so focused that their range of what they say can be limited. And in my life, at least my life, I'm happy some days are going really well, sometimes bad things happen. So I have a lot, just like most human beings, it's up and down, our emotions change, good things happen, bad things happen. And I try to do that with my artwork too. So some of them are just silly, some of them are fun, some of them are loving, but I think they're always with respect and concern is what I try to do. So it's something I really like doing that. So any other pieces?
I love hearing hearing how you created this almost perfect sphere of screws, and people are so curious about how you did it. Of course, I got to be around and know a little bit about it, but I think the technical side of that is really cool.
Tell me you had a
The technical side is I'm just so gifted it was no problem. No, actually, I went over to the physical ed department and I asked for if they had an extra exercise ball. So, and they had one that was semi-deflated, but it still held air. And so I took plaster and burlap and covered half of the ball with it. And when I did it, you could see the seam, so I knew where the halfway mark was. And it's so easy to do it that it's ridiculous. And a lot of artists will do this, and you look at it, how they do that? It's a very simple thing. And then you turn the ball, the plaster and burlap, and you lay the screws in, and you ground the screws so the welder can short out, basically. And you weld these screws together. And I received these screws from, actually my technician at the time found them in surplus in a box. And I said, I got to use those. So I laid it around, and this one's called Screwball. And these are actually screws down here too, the same screws. Yeah, there's a little head. And what gave me the idea, if you remember the Bugs Bunny cartoons, with the screwball and the flag, and I always thought that was great. I still love that stuff. I haven't outgrown it at all. So that was kind of the beginning part of how to build that. And then the part was just trying to make it happen. So that's how I did that.
Like the level in.
The level, yeah. This is one I knew I want. A lot of times I don't know that the object will inspire the piece. This is one where I knew what I wanted to do before I bought the problem was finding the right level. And I think I was telling Christian, I had one found. I found one, but I'm cheap. And I didn't buy it, and then I was mad, and it was gone the next time I went down to that place. And so that sold the tools. And then I came back another time, and this one was there, and I knew that was better. So it was meant to be. So the idea of level-headed is the guy is not level-headed. So, some people act like they got it all under control, but they don't. So, and like this, is this just a beautiful vise? I got it on eBay. I think it was $10 or something. And I didn't know what I was going to do with it, but I loved the vise. And it's virtuous vice. So virtuous, very good and giving. But vice is something usually you have a vice. Yeah, so so it was kind of playing on those words, both good and bad. And that's a really bad day at work. Yeah. You see, you're reading, and I couldn't have come up with a better reason for building that. So. Oh, because that's when I was buying them at the little places that sell. That's the tags they had on them, and I said, "Oh, I love that idea," And I said, what a great way to label them. And then the problem was the tags I bought at like Walmart were bright white, and then I had to soak them in something. I used tea. And what I did, though, the second time I did my second batch, I used the wrong tea. So I had to throw them away and redo it. I remembered what I used. So, and I just let them soak overnight and then let them dry out so they looked a little aged. So the other thing I think I've learned over the years is sensitivity to materials, to make things work together like they belong. And it does take a little effort to do that, but yeah.
Well, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Really appreciate you being here.
Thank you. I really enjoyed coming down here, and I hope you enjoy the show. And I'm around a bit. And if you have any questions, please feel free to ask.
Thank you.
Huh?